Welcome to the Explainer. In this special extended explainer, we're taking a really deep dive into something that, well, I think we all experience, that search for inner guidance. So here's the question at the heart of it all. How do you tell the difference, between your own thoughts, that constant chatter, and a true voice of guidance? It's something so many of us wrestle with, right? So today we're going to move from that challenge of all that inner noise to hopefully a framework for finding some real clarity and purpose. Let's get into it. All right, we're going to break this down into a 6-part journey. We'll start with my thought or something more, then look at the posture of listening, the many channels of guidance, discovering your original design, the pattern of transformation, and finally, what it looks like to live a life guided by voice. Okay, first things first, let's jump right into what is probably the biggest hurdle for most of us. How in the world do you distinguish the signal from all the noise that's going on in your own head? This is where people tend to get stuck. So the first step is really learning to recognize the feel of your thoughts. You know that internal chatter, right? It's often really anxious, it's kind of self-serving, it's loud. It can feel like it's just debating endlessly in your head. But the inner voice? Well, that's usually something else entirely. It's described as peaceful, more focused on others. It often comes as this sudden, quiet whisper that just cuts through everything else. It's clear, and it brings a sense of conviction.
Okay, but here's where it gets a little more complex. It's not always as simple as my thought versus the voice. Sometimes your own thought is the voice of guidance. The real challenge, the thing we have to watch out for, is how our own inner state can kind of warp the message.
Yeah. Things like deep-seated wounds, or when you're just feeling overwhelmingly frustrated or even desperate. A rebellious spirit, that stubbornness, or a really strong desire for personal recognition, or maybe just being unhelpfully attached to one specific outcome. When our hearts are clouded by these things, we tend to hear everything through that filter. We hear what we want to hear. So to hear clearly, it's not about trying to listen harder. It's about getting into the right posture first. And that brings us to our next section. It really isn't about straining to hear. So if it's not that, then what is it? Well, the key seems to be cultivating a very specific kind of mindset, one of openness and humility. This quote really says it all. The voice is heard most clearly when my own things are shattered. Now, the source material uses a powerful word for the state, brokenness. But that doesn't mean being, destroyed. It's more a term for radical surrender. So what is this posture of brokenness? It's really a state of humility, where your personal ego, your plans, your self-will, all of that is set aside. And what that does is it creates this quiet space inside for true guidance to actually be heard. It's about letting go of these plans we're holding on to so tightly. I mean, think about King David. He was called a man after God's own heart, but that was after his life was basically broken and had to be rebuilt. The idea is that in that place of surrender, when our own agenda is finally out of the way, that's when the voice can come through with incredible clarity. Okay, so once we're in that posture of openness, we can start to see all the different ways that guidance can show up. And it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Let's get into some of the real stories of this voice in action, because they're pretty amazing. So the first channel is just a sudden, unexpected thought. A lot of the time, the voice just comes as a clear, simple instruction right in the middle of a totally ordinary moment, no lightning from the sky necessary. And a great example of this is a really powerful story about, of all things, picking up trash. And this story just illustrates the whole process perfectly. First, there's the prompt. A guy's leaving work, enjoying a sunset, and he sees this gross pile of trash. And the thought just pops into his head, you pick up that trash. Then comes the resistance, that internal argument. Wait, why me? I didn't throw it there. So then he makes a little bargain, a test. Okay, if there's a trash bag in my car, I'll do it. And of course, there was a bag. So he surrenders. He does it. He picks up the trash. And it's only after he obeys that the revelation comes. He gets this insight. A thoughtless person creates a mess, so someone with awareness has to be the one to restore the balance. Just an incredible lesson that came from a tiny act of obedience. Okay, another way guidance can come is through a series of revealing dreams. This isn't just one single thought, it's more like a story that unfolds over time, and it often happens with really big life decisions. There's this incredible story about a couple who was guided through a huge move they were actually resisting, all through their dreams. So the story goes, they felt this call to move to Kona, Hawaii, but they were really hesitant. I mean, their life was stable. It didn't seem to make a lot of logical sense. But then the dreams started. Night one, they see a huge wall blocking their path, and it suddenly gets demolished. Night two, their house catches on fire, basically forcing them to evacuate their old life. Night three, they're in a new place, joyfully gathering tons of fruit into baskets. And the last one, night four, they're trying to use a calculator to figure out the finances, and it breaks. A pretty clear symbol that their human logic just wasn't going to cut it here. And then came your real-world confirmation. An old lawsuit they were involved in was suddenly settled, and it gave them the exact amount of money they needed for the move. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The message was just undeniable. A third channel for guidance is, well, it's the world around us. The voice doesn't just work internally. It can use external things to get its message across. Other people, things you watch, circumstances, it's all part of it. Think about it. Maybe your spouse says something that confirms a feeling you haven't even spoken out loud yet. Or a powerful scene in a movie, like one person shared how in The Lion King, when Mufasa's spirit calls out to Simba, it felt like a direct, personal call to him. Or maybe a line in a TV show just hits you with this sudden, personal insight. Another example is hearing the same message, maybe a scripture verse, from multiple completely unrelated sources. Or an opportunity, a door just opens up that perfectly aligns with a prompting you've been feeling. These aren't just coincidences, right? In this framework, they're seen as confirmation. Okay, so we've talked about how the voice speaks, these thoughts, dreams, confirmations, but let's get to the why. Why does it speak at all? Well, the source material presents this really beautiful idea. The voice is trying to guide us toward what it calls our original design. So what is original design? Think of it like this. It's the unique blueprint of your purpose, your gifts, your potential. It's who you were created to be. It's the truest, most powerful, and most authentic version of yourself. And the whole point of hearing this voice is to help you become that person. Let me share a really powerful real-life example from a workshop. So there was this man feeling really conflicted and confused about his life. He sat in a chair, and a group of people just took a moment to listen for insights about his design. And what they started to hear, piece by piece, began to paint a picture of him that he just couldn't see for himself. One person said, "I saw a killer whale, dominant in every single ocean." Another person saw something else, a warrior in full armor, standing guard, totally unshakable. One after another, people just shared these incredible images that were coming to them. And as all these fragments came together, this incredible picture formed. A protector, a global influencer, a leader of leaders, a person of deep, unshakable faith, someone who has the heart of a father, but also can be as joyful as a child. All these things came together to reveal this coherent, powerful identity. And for the man sitting there, it was a total revelation. It was a call out of his confusion and into who he was truly meant to be. That is the why behind the voice. So that's the goal. But how does that transformation actually happen? How do we get from that place of confusion to clarity, from our limited self to our original design? Well, there's a core pattern at work here, kind of like the engine of a guided life. It comes down to two things: power and love. The source explains that the voice comes from a character that is the perfect union of these two things. So power is the engine of change. It's the ability to create, to act, to overcome. But love is the fuel for that engine. It's the motivation of selfless giving and relationship. And the ultimate model for this, where perfect love and ultimate power meet, is presented as the cross. It's seen as the place where perfect love, shown through total surrender, unleashes ultimate power. And that becomes the pattern for our own lives, this cycle of surrendering out of love and then being raised up in new power, in new life. All right, so if you start to live in this cycle of listening, surrendering, being transformed, what does that actually look like? What are the tangible results? Let's talk about what a life guided by the voice actually feels like. The fruits of a guided life are pretty profound. Doubt gets replaced by this deep trust. Anxious striving is replaced by peace.
The fear of the unknown starts to fade, and a real sense of purpose takes its place. Obedience stops being a burden and actually becomes a joy. You see relationships healed and new ones forged. You just live with this constant awareness that you're not alone. Your life literally shifts from being reactive to being this proactive, co-created adventure. And this quote just nails the whole thing. We no longer look back and say, oh, God was there. We say, God spoke, we obeyed, and this is the amazing journey we walked. You see the difference? It's a fundamental shift from just reacting to life to living in this active, guided partnership. It's about trust in real time.
So now that you've heard their stories, it really leaves us with one question. What could your own adventure with the voice look like? Because all these stories, all these principles, they're more than just information. They're an invitation to listen, to trust, and to begin the incredible adventure of discovering and living out your own original design.